Howdy, folks. Welcome to the Daily Coin. My name is Rory, and today is Sunday, July the 8th, 2018. And I have the very distinct honor and great pleasure of welcoming to the show for the first time, obviously, a new guest, and he's an authority in the investment space, and he is obviously an investor. He's a trend forecaster. He is the founder and chief editor of Crush the Street, and you can find all of his work at crushthestreet.com, as well as a great YouTube channel loaded with awesome interviews at Crush the Street as well. And I'm speaking, of course, of Kenneth Ameduri. Kenneth, welcome to the Daily Coin.
Rory, thanks for having me on. Appreciate the time.
Well, I'm glad you're here, and we have a lot to cover. As far as the economy is concerned, I want to start there, and then we're just going to let it kind of bleed into a couple other topics as well. But what is your take on what Trump has done with the tax reform that he's brought to the table? Everybody's kind of cheering and glad-handing, and it's awesome, it's beautiful. The economy is booming, which you and I both know that that's probably not exactly right. But my bigger concern is 10 years from now, when the taxes revert, what's that scenario going to look like in your opinion? Or are we even going to make it that far?
Yeah, we're 8-9 years into this bull market, right, Rory? And Trump is fighting this major uphill battle, and he's called what he's dealing with even prior to his presidency a giant bubble that he now has to deal with. And there's a lot of things that Trump is doing that I'm very fundamentally happy about. I'm happy that he's making the U.S. a more competitive environment to do business. The cost of business in the U.S. by restructuring the tax laws has gotten a lot better, has gotten cheaper, and that's clearly a good thing.
Yes.
We are seeing billions of dollars come back into the economy because people are saying, okay, well, it's not as expensive to bring our money into the US. And that's the nature of the free market. The free market is going to go where capital is treated best. And if it's not being treated good here in the US, corporations, people, they find ways to move it around to where it's treated best. And I think Trump is doing a good job on that front. I'm conflicted on the way he's implementing tariffs. That's, from an Austrian economist perspective, problematic. It disrupts comparative advantage. It makes things more expensive in certain cases. It enriches the government because of these taxes. But at the same time, one of the things that a lot of Austrian economists aren't talking about is the posturing, is the negotiations that Trump is doing in the process. I don't think he's stuck on wanting to have tariffs on all these countries, but I think he's going to get some concessions along the way, which could be good for the economy. But he is battling something that is really beyond him, the artificial stimulus, the ultra low interest rates. I mean, interest rates are just starting to go up now. And, the implications of that haven't fully been told yet. Some people are talking about a 20-year-long bull market potentially. That's highly unlikely, in my opinion. I think once they really start to shrink the balance sheet, interest rates start to go higher, we're going to see our interest debt payment, go through the roof. And a lot of things really go against the U.S. And one of the things that we're going to be talking about today is massive displacement of jobs because of the fourth industrial revolution. And we'll get into that. But there's a lot of things going against the economy right now. And I'm optimistic on certain things because I think we got a good guy in office to a certain degree. But in other fronts, I think it's unfixable.
I agree with just about everything that you said. And I think that some of what Trump is doing, most of what he's doing, I think is positive. I think it's great. I wish that he would have maintained the same posture as president that he held while he was campaigning when he wasn't president, and saying that, talking about the bubble economics and how horrific it is, and the reality of unemployment. He was talking about how the statistics were all wrong, and now he embraces them, claims them. This is my economy, this is my unemployment, and I hope that it doesn't come back and get him, because it very well could. He owns all of this stuff now, and you and I both know that a lot of the statistics where unemployment are concerned, they're a mirage.
Sure.
They just don't add up at all. So
You
I
know,
hope that it doesn't cause him problems.
I hate the idea of everything collapsing on Trump, because that would be, obviously something that the left, very progressive minded people can wrap up and blame on Trump, even if it's not his fault and it was just a culmination of what has happened over the years.
Right.
But and I've had to come to terms with this. As well as yourself, guys like Peter Schiff, Ron Paul, we all see the problems, the underlying problems, and Trump sees the underlying problems. But once you become a leader, once you become in charge, there is no room to be negative. And I guess it's not about lying to the people, but it's about getting up in front and saying, "Hey, we're going to give it our best shot," because you know going out and saying, "Hey, we have a massive amount of problems, it's unfixable," that would just be momentum, creating momentum in the wrong direction. But at least he's getting up there. He's being optimistic. He's attracting
Yes.
capital, and he's probably bringing in business from all over the world because he's up there being a strong leader, and
Yes.
that's important, right? That's
Yep.
being a strong leader despite the circumstances. He has no choice but to be a strong leader in this situation. So, to that degree, I support him on that.
Yes. And he is a strong leader, and I think that one of the greatest attributes that he brings to the table is a, a better level, or a higher level of respect from other global leaders. And this kind of dovetails into what we're talking about as far as the unemployment and the economy, and the changing economy. And one of the topics that's been batted around, in particular by the progressives, or the left Democrats, has been a universal basic income. Our economy, in my opinion, still has structural problems that may never be fixed. It's improving, but it has a very, very long way to go. Automation, uh, artificial intelligence, which we're going to get into in just a minute, both of these they're a reality. They've been a reality for a number of years. Is universal basic income, is that something that is going to benefit the people, or is it just going to be another tool of enslavement? From your perspective, what do you see regarding universal basic income, or UBI?
Mm. Yeah, Rory, universal basic income, that's really the next socialist climax for the implementation in the US, right? I
Yep.
know Sanders would love something
Yes.
along the lines of a universal basic income, but it defies economic laws, and it's a socialist dream.
Yes.
And it's a surrender of freedom and liberty to the government, because when you become dependent on the government, you're beholden to them, and it's very difficult to break free from that. And in an environment like that, there's really no incentive to thrive, and really you can kiss American ingenuity and resilience goodbye if they implement this universal basic income. And we know it's a problem. I mean, we've seen purchasing power be diminished since, for the last 100 years, basically. I mean, you go back to the 1960s or the 1970s, what a postman made, gave somebody a nice middle class house, two cars in the driveway, the ability to send their kids to school and go on a vacation once a year. Today, in 2018, to start in 2018, you need to be making what a doctor or a lawyer makes to live the way a postal worker did. And you see teachers just picketing in the streets now because they're not making enough money. And again, it's because they're depending on the government. And if you depend on the government, such as something like a universal basic income, you're going to continuously fall behind. And on a macro level, that's going to be a problem for the US ingenuity and staying ahead. And it would cost billions and trillions of dollars and really undercut the lifestyle that Americans have enjoyed for so many years. And what better way to spoon feed universal basic income to people than to scare people into worrying about automation and AI taking their jobs? And because robots are going to now take your jobs, we will take care of you with something along the lines of universal basic income. And it's going to be a problem, just like Social Security benefits in terms of purchasing power are down more than 30% since 2000. And that's what I would continue to expect to see if something such as universal basic income was implemented.
Well, they're trying it in Sacramento, I believe, California. It's in one of the California cities, and there's upwards of, well, I can't remember the number, but I know that it's been rolled out, and they're giving it a whirl. So maybe that Alexandria Cortez, maybe that's on her agenda as well. The young lady that was just the socialist that was just elected in New York, that could very well be on her agenda as well. So, I mean, if she's a Bernie Sanders disciple, so it would fit perfectly that, or I would be surprised if it wasn't part of her agenda and her ideas. So,
You think about it, most people want the same things. They want the same end result. They want people to live good. We want good medical. We want to live healthy lives. We want people to be able to afford things. But the solutions is always the problem, right?
Right.
From the government or coming from the private sector where there's an incentive. Attracting capital or trying to steal capital from other people. What's more productive? What's going to do more good and incentivize a greater environment, not one that deteriorates over time? And I think that's where the biggest problems come. And it comes from lack of understanding because unfortunately, not many people make decisions that directly impact them financially when it comes to deciding what goes on in government. They act on what's best for them, even if it's stealing money out of the pocket of somebody else. They're not connecting those dots, and there's no safeguards for people's personal privacy and their what they own. And unfortunately, it's degenerative. But the whole world is going this direction. The whole Western society is going this direction, and it's going to continue to play out. And with technology, signaling for more efficient ways to move the economy along, especially with artificial intelligence, that's going to cut into more and more of people's purchasing power, their livelihoods, especially if they're not prepared for this change that, we see coming.
With artificial intelligence, I mean, I'm sure you heard recently or listened to the interview that I recently conducted with Anthony Lacavera, who is the founder and CEO of Global Live. And he was describing artificial intelligence as nothing more than predicting an outcome by way of an algorithm. And if you look at it from that perspective, it's very benign. There's not much, it's something that you and I could take and develop something that utilizes this algorithm, and we could benefit from it, and we could probably make a fortune on it, and
Mm,
maybe not even displace anyone's job, maybe actually create, more jobs.
absolutely.
What do you, how do you describe AI, Kenneth? I mean, what is it from your perspective? I mean, I think that Anthony's description, I like it. I mean, because it's simple, it's something everybody can wrap their head around. It's an algorithm that's predicting an outcome. That's it. I mean, so how do you describe AI, and what is it?
Well, I would highly recommend people to go to crushthestreet.com/AI. You can get a lot of information there on artificial intelligence. And also, we'll have another link for you, Rory, for our number one pick. We're talking about Anthony's company, Global Live. But what I would say is machine learning. This is what is coming. Machine learning is going to be machine earning, and it's not going to be menial jobs that are displaced. They're going to be high level analytical jobs. That's what the machines are starting to do. They're entering the realm of high level thinking, computing, analyzing, and doing things that humans really can't do on a large scale basis. I mean, think about Airbnb, 5 million listings at any one time, 300,000 leases a day. That's AI coordinating that, making travel cheaper for the consumer and allowing people that otherwise wouldn't be entrepreneurs to be entrepreneurs. And again, yeah, so that's supplementing the environment. That's a positive of what we're going to see with AI, and I think it's going to be disruptive. I think we have the number one occupation right now being a driver, whether that's a taxi cab driver or bus driver or Uber driver or truck driver. This is the number one occupation right now in the U.S., probably the world, and it's at risk of being displaced by an AI, a robot. But what are the positives of that? Obviously, for the person who's driven a truck for 30 years, that's going to be a problem if he loses his job and didn't prepare for this. But what's going to be the positive of this? Well, Elon Musk thinks that there's going to be a 10x reduction in car accidents once everyone is, using AI and driverless cars. If that happens, well, we have more efficient freeways. The highways aren't as congested. The plumber can get to different places around the city quicker and easier and make more money. And your cars now become meeting rooms instead of instead of having to drive places. Now you're meeting with people and being more efficient, and that's what it's ultimately about. If you go back to the 1800s, Rory, like 80-90% of the economy was agriculture, the early 1800s. So a huge amount of human capital were being used to just grow food. I mean, that's very, very inefficient. Now you started to have machines take this job over here in 2018. Only 2% of the economy is dealing with agriculture. That means things have gotten 95% more efficient over the course of the last couple hundred years. And that didn't mean that everyone lost their job. There was a massive displacement of those jobs, but now they're working in other things. And we don't know what we don't know, but I fully believe that there are going to be sectors and opportunities that arise in AI that we haven't even wrapped our minds around yet. It's coming, and it's going to be exciting, but it's also going to come with its negatives as well, and we can get into some of that if you'd like.
Yeah, and you said, you made a point of it, AI being geared towards the more professional positions, and that's one of the things that I wanted to ask you is that what types of jobs do you see AI replacing, either in the short term or more importantly in the long term? I mean, is AI going to replace most of the unskilled labor force, or is the target actually the high value professional positions? I mean, what I think in the short term they're probably going after the high value professional positions, but I think in the long term they're going to go after all of them.
Yeah, technology is going to go where it's going to go, and capital is going to flow where it's treated most efficiently. And if you can have a robot do something for cheaper, scale it, and do it better than a human, that's where capital is going to go, whether people like that or not. But I'll give you an example. I mean, what about people that do analysis, on stocks and research reports? Imagine being able to put market reports together using AI, contrasting your portfolio to the overall market. At 3:30, the market was down 2%. But your portfolio was down 1%, and AI quickly reporting this info to you. And even this isn't minimum wage type work. This is, what professionals get paid big bucks to do.
Yeah.
I mean, we're already seeing virtual assistants being in our homes. I mean, these were jobs that people didn't have the ability to afford, right? Most 99% of people didn't have the money or the even the want to have a personal assistant. But now, how many people have Alexas and Google Chromes in their house, whatever those Google Assistants in their houses now, telling them what the weather is going to be like, suggesting routes and traffic, and soon enough they're going to know what's in your fridge, when you should go buy your milk, and anticipating what you're going to do. And again, this is where we're going to start sacrificing our privacy more and more for the convenience. AI locking down your house, setting your alarm, air conditioning, what your air conditioning is going to be doing. This is an area that, maybe the ultra wealthy would have servants in their house, right? Doing this type of thing. But now people have virtual assistants in their house that would otherwise have been done by humans. And that's just going to keep getting more and more prevalent as time goes on. We see AI predicting human health. I mean, they're talking about chipping people's brains and being inside the brain, right? I mean, this is where things are going here. And again, the ultimate breach of privacy. But at the same time, people are worried that AI is going to outpace humans. So the argument for this is, how do we supplement the human brain to compete with advancing technology? And they're talking about chipping people's brains. And imagine, you learning something, Rory, and then transferring that data into me and uploading it instantly. So I now know what you know. I mean, this is the type of stuff that they're doing, and they're actually testing it on rats and animals now, and they're having success actually doing this. So it's definitely a scary world, especially if this technology gets in the hands of zealots or nefarious people. So it's always going to be a balance of getting information out there, informing people, and allowing people to say, hey, this is something I want, or this is something that we need to be careful of.
Yeah, that what you just described is pretty terrifying to me, as far as having something, implanted into my brain that either, that where you and I can transfer information back and forth. I don't know about that.
Rory, let me give you another. I've been reading, a lot on AI. I mean, when you dream, okay, you believe that's real. That's like a reality. When we dream something, when we're in the moment, that's our reality. They're talking about tapping in to the part of our brains where we believe something, a thought, to be reality. So imagine going skydiving and having this crazy experience, but then sharing that experience with somebody else in their chip to trick their mind to believe that that was real, to have a very real life experience skydiving that you never actually went on. And obviously, that's kind of a cool thing, when you think about it. But at the same time, if they're able to do that, they can literally hijack your reality.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like that's
Yes.
a total breach of your reality and essentially steal your life if that's taken too far. So there's definitely some concerns out there with this, and people need to be aware of what's going on. I know a lot of people aren't aware, and a lot of people choose to stay, somewhat disconnected and trust what's going on. It's kind of like what we were talking about in the early part of the interview. Many people are so clueless as to what's going on in the economy. They don't understand sound fundamental principles. And I believe it's these same kind of people that are going to allow all of this technology to usher in a complete breach of human privacy and disrupt, the world we live in. And things are happening now faster than they ever have before. I mean, this is going to be the fastest and most disruptive revolution of my lifetime. And it's happening faster than Moore's law. It's something that I've been saying now for a while. We're outpacing Moore's law to such a great degree.
It's really the quickening is at times breathtaking, and at other times it's just like, oh my goodness, just hold on, because things just move and change at such a pace that it's hard. It's really difficult to keep up with. And is there a limit to AI's ability to learn, and will it reach a point of seeing humans as the enemy? I mean, and that's kind of what you were from what you were just describing, the Matrix, the movie The
Yeah.
Matrix, where your reality is hijacked. I mean, and isn't that really isn't that AI really just seeing humans as the enemy? So it just paints a picture that makes humans irrelevant, or am I off base here?
Yeah, that's an interesting point, Rory. And again, we don't know what we don't know. And there's questions as to how smart AI can get, and will it be self-aware, and what is self-awareness, and will it get to a point that it makes decisions, altruistic decisions, beyond what it was programmed to do. And it's really an interesting thing because, as humans, we make decisions on what's moral, what we desire, and what's efficient. And what is AI going to be basing its decisions on? With AI in the military, for instance, if we all of a sudden start giving robots the decision to pull the trigger, right? And not just a human behind the scenes deciding that with the help of a robot, but actually a robot deciding to, you know, push the kill switch on something. I mean, that is huge.
It's
Making a
huge.
moral decision or an efficient decision. How is that going to happen? Or, even with the driverless car example, how are cars going to know whether or not to hit the child that might be in front of the car or to drive off the road and possibly kill 5 people on the sidewalk? I mean, those are decisions that we don't really fully understand and know how AI is going to respond to these things. But I can tell you that AI is getting very, very smart. I mean, we've seen Sophia, the robot by
Yes.
Hanson Robotics, become a citizen in Saudi Arabia. I
Yep.
mean, this you got to be pretty smart to get a citizenship. And then we know AlphaGo, Google's AlphaGo, was beat the smartest man at the game of Go. And this is a game that has more combinations than there are atoms in the earth. This was not pre-programmed. And so it's a powerful thing that we're seeing. And so AI, I think if it's given this platform to just go like a blank slate and the ability to learn and grow, I think that's very powerful. The humans have this thing called the internet. We can tap into the internet and access any information that we want. From the beginning of time, it's like this historical record of all human knowledge is now on the internet, this decentralized network. And we have access to that. But the difference between a human and a computer is a human can't readily absorb information and update and implement. Now, computers can readily update and learn. And that's really where I feel that this fire can really take off, because all of a sudden now you have computers talking to each other, constantly updating, constantly learning. What are the implications of that if it goes completely rogue? And, with the assistance of the wrong people in charge, right? Because that's even in the movies, that's what happens is the
Right.
wrong people in charge set things in motion, and then it kind of gets out of control. So that's where I see the threat. I don't know exactly what the end result is going to be. We don't know what we don't know. All we can do is prepare, especially on a financial perspective. You don't want to become irrelevant and be completely displaced by moving technology. This is coming, whether we like it or not. We don't like it, but it's coming.
Yeah, and in a lot of ways, it's already here. I mean, it's because we've had robots building cars, for 30 years, 40 years now. We've had technology making massive advances for the past same time frame, really, for the past 30 or 40 years, 50 years. Technology's been moving, just like we were saying a minute ago. It's reaching a point now where the quickening is just so fast that it's moving so fast that it's hard to keep up with. And you mentioned, I believe you mentioned IBM, as far as the AlphaGo. That was an IBM product. I mean, and something that can decipher different moves, more moves than there are atoms on the planet. Now, if you just think about that for just a second, that's incredible. To me, that says that it's already out. The genie is out of the bottle, because if you've got one machine that can do that we know about, what's behind it, how many are behind it, and what do they know, and how quick, or what are they learning at this point? And you mentioned the financial benefits, and not getting left behind. I mean, we have to do something in order to try to either benefit from what's happening right now or create our own scenario. I mean, and are there financial benefits with AI that you or I could implement, or that we can go and invest in, or just create something? I mean, how should we be approaching AI from a financial perspective, Kenneth? What would you
Well,
suggest?
you know what, Rory, I think education is key. And, it's going to be so difficult to traverse this rapidly changing landscape. I get nervous thinking about what I'm going to need to teach my kids over the next 15 years to prepare them for what is coming, right? I mean,
Right.
it's huge. It's such a
Huge.
huge question to ask. And the fact is just because something is natural doesn't mean it's always good, right? A tornado, for instance, or a hurricane is something that naturally happens, but there's destruction along the way. And just like the free market or the economy, there are casualties along the way. And it's not a perfect way to move forward, but I think the free market is the best way to move forward. It's the most natural way that incentivizes the most growth, no matter what. But because of AI, and I think this is going to be a very free market, natural thing, you need to position yourself in ways that is going to be supplemented with this new technology and not wiped out by it. And one of the things that we're doing at Crush the Street is partnering with strategic people like Anthony Lacavera. And again, if you want to learn more about that, visit crushthestreet.com/live/live. We'll have the link in the description area. But this is going to be something that you really want to position yourself and to not be obsolete on this info. Governments are going to signal for this. One thing that people aren't talking about, Rory, is the demographic issue. For instance, in China and Japan, it's very top heavy, especially with China and their one child policy. So how are they going to replace these jobs, right? There's going to be a massive issue with a bunch of old people and not enough people in the workforce to pay for them. But one thing people aren't talking about is the fact that AI is here. And I believe that these jobs are going to be filled by robots. And they're going to try to figure out how to tax these robots. Don't ask me how and how they're going to, precisely define income created by this robot or that. But that's what's coming. We're going to see jobs filled, and governments are going to demand it. It's not even going to be just a technological advancement, but governments are going to say, hey, we need to be in front of this because we need the tax revenue for our economy. And not many people are discussing that. And I think that's going to be one of the ways that we see that gap filled.
Yeah, that's an interesting. I hadn't thought of that aspect of it as far as from a financial perspective. If you have universal basic income, which is where we started, handed out to people, but you have a lot of the workforce is now idle because of AI. Now how does that work? Well, it doesn't. I mean, there's nothing there for
right.
the.
And you're going to continue to see the wealthy, be separated from the middle class. There's going to be a larger and larger gap because, unfortunately, it's going to be many of the rich and powerful companies, rich and powerful individuals that control AI and scale it on massive levels. I mean, look what Amazon is doing.
Yes.
Essentially tapping into almost every single sector. We just got news that they're going to be in the pharmacy business now.
Yep.
And what's that going to do for Walgreens and CVS and some of these companies down the road here? And so I think massive disruptions are coming. And if you're not prepared, you can be in for a major shock.
Yeah, and if it's not you, it's certainly going to be your children, and that's guaranteed right there.
Absolutely. And that's why we suggest building your financial moat. We do a lot of research at Crush the Street, and we do our best to, get people in to the best trends and be in front of the trends. We did that with cryptocurrencies in 2017. Many people made 10 and 20 times their money on some cryptocurrencies and even some of the stocks that we had recommended. And now we're looking at artificial intelligence. We're getting in front of this trend, and it's important to build that financial moat and be prepared because the more you're disconnected from the changes that happen, the more you have enough financial fortitude to insulate yourself, the less all of this matters. So, and that's the good news for people. And I highly suggest people to take this seriously and to build their financial moat.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, if you're not taking if you don't take this conversation seriously, then you're going to be swept away. So,
well, action trumps IQ all day long.
All day.
And people need to take action, and those who are taking action, those who are taking this seriously, are asking the right questions, are putting themselves ahead of what is coming. Because listening to your traditional college education, your teachers, which are embedded into the government scam, is going to put you behind. You need to have a high level view of what is going on to really make the best decisions for you and your family, because so many people, so many kids, unfortunately, are being duped into taking out hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of student debt and learning things that are archaic,
Right.
not putting themselves in front of the trends, but just, like sheep to the slaughter, cows to the slaughter, walking into uh, the gas chamber, unfortunately, and treading water for years. I mean, it's so sad how many millennials I know that are still living at home, unable to move out, unable to start their lives because of how screwed up the economy is. This is not what America was, what it used to be, what it was supposed to be. But the only thing you can do is take the cards that you've been dealt, take action, and rise above your circumstances. And that's what I'm here to do. I'm here to encourage people and, take action, be optimistic, and deal with the hand that you're dealt and move forward.
Exactly. And what you and if you all you have to do is look at exactly what you just said, Kenneth. You've got you're surrounded, but we're all surrounded by millennials that are still living at home, just graduated, can't find a job, can't support what they're doing, and people are confused by this. And like you said, action, it does far better, will serve your life far better than IQ every time. That's just a fact. I love that. So what are your
Well,
closing statements? What would you like to leave the folks with?
Well, Rory, thank you so much for having me on the show, and we appreciate the support at Crush the Street. Sharing some of our stuff and our interviews, and we greatly appreciate even being on and having the opportunity to share some words with your audience here. But yeah, I would highly suggest people to wake up each day, be optimistic. Don't look at the situation and allow it to get you down, because defeat is death. You know what I mean? You can't move forward if you're just defeated, depressed. You only have one option, and that's hope in life. Waking up, being optimistic, and giving yourself a chance to thrive. So that's the greatest thing that you can do for yourself. Wake up with gratitude and take on the day with everything you got. But if you want more information on the things that we talked about, trends, cryptocurrencies, what's going on with artificial intelligence, and what's going on with precious metals, I know a lot of people are frustrated with that nowadays. Visit our work at crushthestreet.com. We post there daily. But yes, Roy, thanks for having me on the show.
Well, certainly appreciate it. And once again, you can find all of Kenneth's work over at crushthestreet.com. And like I said at the beginning of the show, he does great interviews that he publishes, and we republish a lot of his work over at the Daily Coin. And you can find his interviews at Crush the Street on YouTube. And the links will be in the description below the video. And I certainly appreciate all your time today, Kenneth. And I look forward to speaking with you in a not too distant future.
Thanks so much.